The Fèis and Echoil of 1903 and 1904 were historic occasions, although no one in the audience is likely to have known just how historic they'd proved to be. And it was all because of three young people. Ladies first. One of the three was a Dublin girl, not quite 17, who at the 1903 Fèis had won a gold medal for the Gaelic solo.
I was so pleased with myself that I never bothered to go in and listen to the tenors.
Now, if Lily Foley had gone in to listen to those tenors, she'd have heard her future husband. Unmistakable voice. John McCormack, the tenor from Athlone, who for 30 years was one of the best-known singers in the world and one of the most beloved. The world took him to its heart in the way it was to take Bing Crosby and Frank Sinatra later on, and it was no less lavish in its rewards.
At the height of his career in the 1920s, he earned £200,000 a year.
It was like earning $1 million a year in modern money. Whether he did in fact earn that kind of money, even in a freak year, I can't certify. Talking in millions is one of the oldest traditions of showbiz. But what is certain is that for many years he had had the income of a millionaire, and he lived like one. Or rather, he lived like a stage millionaire, like the way millionaires are supposed to live. Yachts, a country mansion in Ireland and in America, an expensive flat in New York, a big house in the fashionable part of London, princely parties, not just for friends, but also for hangers-on, nothing but champagne, he could drink 4 bottles of it a night, and then horses. He used to crack the old joke,
"I keep horses, but the horses don't keep me."
When he lived at Moor Abbey in Kildare, the ancestral mansion of the Marquises of Drogheda, he kept 25 horses. His ambition was to win the Derby. He did manage to win a few minor races, things of no account, but he never won the Derby, and the horses put him about £70,000 in the red. Yet It wouldn't be true to say that money and success had spoiled John McCormack. Oh yes, of course, they spoil everyone to some extent. But in his case, the external security of money and acclaim encouraged him to be sometimes very free in expressing his feelings. He could say hurtful things. A friend of his asked him to listen to a girl singing, and in an effort to do everything possible to make a good impression, the friend got the famous accompanist Gerald Moore to preside at the piano. McCormack's withering verdict on the poor girl was,
"Didn't Gerald do a wonderful accompaniment?"
The only excuse one can make for him is that his nerves had been set on edge by bad art, and to an artist with so sensitive an ear as McCormack's, the singing of a perhaps not very gifted girl could be like the squealing of a fork on a plate. All things considered, money and success spoiled him very little. He remained at bottom a simple man, friendly, preposterously vain, of course, but with a kind heart, and he was always a most faithful and loving husband.
And there was never a better father, although he spoiled the children dreadfully.
A fault on the right side, wouldn't you say, if a fault at all. But the important point is that as a singer he always gave of his best, even when the music hardly deserved it. Indeed, his very conscientiousness about this annoyed the critics and the arbiters of elegance. A man with a voice like McCormack's, they said, shouldn't be singing rubbish.
Like a rose, looking at his mammy with eyes so shiny blue, make you think that heaven is coming close to you. When he's there asleep in his little place, think I see the angels when the dark is falling, when the shadows creep, then they comes on tiptoe to kiss him in his sleep. Sweetest little fellow, everybody knows, don't know what to call him, but he's mighty like a rose. Looking at his mommy with eyes so shiny blue, make you think that heaven is coming close to you. Dark is fallen, when the shadows creep, then they comes on tiptoe to kiss him in his sleep. Sweetest little fellow, everybody knows, don't know what to call him, but he's mighty like a rose. Looking at his mommy with eyes so shiny blue, make you think that heaven is coming close to you.
It was the very excellence of McCormack's singing of not very lofty sentimental ballads like that which annoyed the connoisseurs. It could be argued that a beautiful voice used with the highest artistry belongs to the whole world, pop as well as classical. Why then should tens of thousands of people be denied the joy of it, simply because they don't happen to fancy classical music? There was a great deal of snobbery in the later criticisms of those who had all too readily forgotten what McCormack had done. Schubert's Du bist ruhig, You Are at Rest. As you have heard, a rather old record. It was made in March 1924, when McCormack was nearly 40 years of age. He had been born on June the 14th, 1884, in Athlone, to parents who were in what in those days were called humble circumstances. His father was a Scotsman by birth, and by all accounts had a bit of a voice. Indeed, all of the 6 McCormack children, 2 boys, 4 girls, had voices, and young John's voice wasn't regarded as anything out of the ordinary. Now, to the day he died, there was a very noticeable religious streak in John McCormack.
When he was a boy, there was some talk that he'd go on for the priesthood.
Yes, there were certain of the clerical student's characteristics in him. He was cheerful and good-humoured. There doesn't seem to be any doubt about that. But there was also an underlying seriousness and a capacity for sustained hard work that isn't all that common in Ireland. It must have been his father's Scots blood in him.
At 12 years of age, he got a scholarship entitling him to enter Sligo College at half fee.
In fact, he worked his way through Sligo College by means of scholarships. He was well liked by the masters, not just because he was a clever lad, but because he was a very likeable one. He wasn't a complicated character. He was simple, direct, open, and he remained that way all his life. Naturally, he was in the school choir, and he did solos at the school concerts. At the very first school concert he took part in, he was 14 at the time, he learned a valuable lesson.
The morning after the concert, Maggie, the schoolmaid, came up to me. "Oh, Mr. John," she said.
Oh, Mr. John, you sang grand last night. But why did you sing in them foreign tongues we couldn't understand?
The truth is, he had been singing in English, but he was clever enough to learn the lesson. He realised that if Maggie didn't know he was singing in English, there must have been others who didn't.
I said to myself, the words of a song are its soul, and that's what I must concentrate on in future.
And he did. Whatever you might say about a McCormack performance, you could never complain that you couldn't hear every word clearly and distinctly.
Would I but hear your voice again, and have you near? Could I but hold you in my arms to wipe away my tears? God keep you is my prayer. Watch over you with care, and guide you once more to me. With love unabating, I shall be waiting. God keep you is my prayer.
In that song, as in every McCormack song, every word is clear as a bell. On one occasion, McCormack's clarity drew a half-sneering witticism from Yeats. It was in 1924, the year they revived the Talchan Games. McCormack gave a concert in the Theatre Royal, and Yeats was standing at the back of the circle with some literary friends. Apparently McCormack had reached the point in his programme when he was treating the audience to some of the less exalted numbers from his repertoire. Said Yeats,
Oh, the clarity of the words. The dreadful clarity of the words.
but McCormack returned Yeats good for evil. No singer was better able to put over Yeats's words than McCormack.
Down by the Salley gardens mine Noah and I did meet. She passed the thrown vow to me. But I, being young and foolish, with her did not agree. In a field by the river, my love and I did stand, and on my drooping shoulder she placed her snow white hand. She bid me take life easy as the grass grows on the weirs. But I was young and foolish, and now I'm full of
The clarity of McCormack's singing diction was indeed admirable. He sometimes altered the words of a song to provide himself with a more convenient vowel, although I dare say that when he was doing this he seldom marred a masterpiece. Nonetheless, his pronunciation is open to some criticism. To fastidious ears, some of his mock Italian vowels became most irritating. For instance, give and live tended to be give and leave, and there and where came closer to there and where. I myself found his bless this house, O Lord, we pray, already agonizing enough verbally and musically, even more agonizing because he made it something like bless these house, O Lord, we pray. Of course, when one's chief grouse about a singer is the way he pronounces the words, one is really scraping the bottom of the barrel for something to complain about. It's true that friendly critics often overpraised John McCormack, but he seldom gave the unfriendly critics a chance to condemn him on technical grounds. As I've already mentioned, he treated every song, good, bad, or indifferent, as if it were a masterpiece. He was not only a popular performer, but a performer's performer. Musicians couldn't but admire such astonishing mastery of breathing. Long phrases seemed to flow without break, as if from an electrically powered bellows instead of a pair of human lungs. Above all, there was a wonderful, a miraculous evenness of tone. There were many other tenor voices which in themselves were just as lovely as McCormack's, but it's hard to think of a singer who combined a lovely voice with McCormack's absolute control, technical wizardry, and an artistry that was unimpeachable. The Czech violinist Jan Kubelik, father of the conductor, put the case well. He said,
"That man must have a Stradivarius in his throat."
Oh
recording that, as I need hardly mention. Success came to John McCormack fairly early. It has to come to singers while they're young. The voice doesn't last. Indeed, it sometimes happens that by the time a singer is world famous, the voice is already past its best. John McCormack was 19 when he won the gold medal in the 1903 Fèis Ceoil. Applause was forbidden, but after his song, the audience couldn't be held back. It wasn't fair to the other competitors, but McCormack had swept the audience off its feet. He seems to have done much the same to the adjudicator, Signor Luigi Denza, the man who wrote Funiculi Funicula.
There is no need to tell you who the winner is. You have chosen him yourself.
And that was pretty well to be the pattern of John McCormack's reception by audiences for the rest of his working life, except when politics got in the way, as it did in Australia, but of that more presently. Now, at the beginning, I mentioned that the 1904 Fèis Ceoil was another historic one. This time McCormack was only indirectly concerned. In his circle of acquaintances was another tenor, a Dublin-born one. This tenor, too, had a gift for music, a gift surpassing McCormack's. The voice was in its way just as remarkable, just as memorable. Once you heard this high-pitched, sad-toned, ghostly tenor voice, you never forgot it. James Joyce.
Look, look, the dusk is growing. My branches lofty are taking root, and my cold chair's gone ashly. Feeloo, feeloo. What age is that? It soon is late. 'Tis endless now since Arale one last saw Waterhouse's clock. They took it asunder, I heard them sigh. When will they reassemble it? Oh, my back, my back, my back. I'd want to go to Aixley Pain.
James Joyce's gift for music was more extensive than McCormack's. Indeed, when regarded sub specie eternitatis, it was more valuable, for it was creative, though Joyce's compositions were not in notes, but in words. His writings have a magical power of evocation hardly equal since Shakespeare's fantasy poetry, a power that has placed him amongst the glorious immortals of literary art. Today he is acknowledged to be a far more brilliant feather in Ireland's cap than John McCormack, but in 1904 few would have held to that opinion, least of all McCormack himself. So McCormack felt quite easy in his mind about encouraging Joyce to enter for the Fèis, and generally to follow in McCormack's footsteps. In March of that year, 1904, the two tenors spent several evenings together, and what wouldn't we give to know what they were talking about? It's said that Joyce would have won the gold medal in the Fèis, only he disqualified himself by refusing to do a sight test, on the ground that no true artist could bring himself to perform in public without careful preparation. So he got a bronze medal. When he found the pawnbroker wouldn't give him anything for it, he dropped it in the Liffey. Later in the year, McCormack and Joyce sang at the same concert. It was called the Irish Revival Industries Show concert, and it took place at the Ancient Concert Rooms on Saturday, August the 27th, 1904. As I look at the programme, I see one name in large, commanding black capitals across the bottom.
Accompanist, Miss Eileen Reedy, ALCM, RIAM.
Then, in much smaller, light type, one reads that in part one of the programme, Mr. James A. Joyce sang Down by the Salley Gardens, while Mr. J. F. McCormack presently obliged with The Green Isle of Erin. In part two, Mr. Joyce rendered The Croppy Boy. Mr. McCormack, already showing signs of things to come, was down to sing The Irishman. And there was another significant pointer. In the newspaper notice about the concert, the reporter said,
3 of the artistes who contributed to the success of the Iona concerts in the Mansion House will sing this evening. Miss Agnes Tracy, Mr. J.C. Doyle, and Mr. J.F. McCormack.
Then came the also-rans.
The following will also contribute: Miss Olive Barry, Madam Hall, Miss Walker,
And last on the list,
Mr. James A. Joyce.
as far as we know, McCormack and Joyce didn't maintain close contact. I can call to mind no notable remarks by Joyce about the rival tenor, and I'm aware of the implication of the term rival tenor. for one gets the impression that there were times when Mr. James A. Joyce would rather have been a famous singer than a famous author. In the 1930s, he tried very hard to advance the career of a tenor named O'Sullivan, declaring that he was much, much better than McCormack. And there is one little incident which sticks vividly in my memory. Joyce's biographer tells us that one night James obliged the company in his flat with a stave or two, and Mrs. Joyce observed that she'd rather have McCormack, which indicates that Mrs. Joyce had quite a talent for bitchiness. One feels that if she and her husband had ever listened to this recording, she'd have smiled her Mona Lisa smile at the author of Ulysses and Finnegan's Wake.
There's a little brown road winding over the hill to a little white cot by the sea. There's a little green gate at whose trellis I wait, while two eyes of blue come smiling through at me. There's a grey lock or two in the brown of the hair. There's some silver in mine too, I see. But in all the long years when the clouds brought their tears, those two eyes of blue kept smiling through at me.
When a singer is able to put so much feeling into a song, it can't be justly said of him that he is utterly without dramatic ability. You put feeling into a song more by the art of the actor than that of the singer. McCormack could make the women in his audiences cry happily at his pathos, just as Furtwängler could have tears running down the cheeks of strong men at the end of the hymn to joy. But McCormack himself remained unaffected. Only once, perhaps twice, was he overcome by his own emotion, and that, God help us, was in Mother Machree, which he sang with such feeling that he broke down in the middle of it and couldn't go on. I recall one of his wartime BBC broadcasts, I can't remember the song, when he did appear to falter with emotion. But that, I suspect, was only to try and disguise the fact that old age was compelling him to take a high note semi-falsetto. In short, he was by no means without dramatic ability. Yet he was never really effective in opera. I dare say he was all right as Ottavio in Don Giovanni, who has little to do apart from walking to the front of the stage and singing Dalla sua pace and Il mio tesoro. Mozart evidently agreed with von Bülow that a tenor is not a voice but a disease, and accordingly Mozart seldom asked a tenor to do anything requiring intelligence. Not so Verdi and Puccini. They expected their tenors to be able to act as well as sing. Now, as long as you only heard a recording of McCormack in Italian opera, you'd assume that he would have been a first-rate Duke, or Rudolfo, or Alfred. Before the First World War, through the happy accident of catching the attention of a rich and influential London patron, McCormack got a foothold in Covent Garden. The then coloratura soprano, Luisa Tetrazzini, loved having him as her tenor for the Donizetti and Bellini favourites. Indeed, McCormack's wife wasn't above hinting that...
I think that Madame Tetrazzini, who was then getting on in years...
She was only 40.
I think she rather fancied my handsome young tenor.
Nellie Melba also liked singing with McCormack, and she was 50. The pair of them, that is, McCormack and Melba, sang Mimi and Rodolfo in Bohème several times. Rodolfo was, indeed, one of McCormack's favourite parts. Puccini himself came to hear them more than once, but he didn't like McCormack in his music. Some well-intentioned person pointed out to the composer that McCormack had learned the role from the score. Puccini's comment was icy.
Even so, there are certain parts on which he should consult some authority.
One suspects that what annoyed Puccini was McCormack's undramatic performance on the stage. McCormack wasn't comfortable in opera on the stage. You've only to look at the pictures of him in costume. There's a strained expression on his face. He doesn't take kindly to fancy dress and wigs. He obviously feels a bit of a fool. But when in formal morning dress, what he'd wear for daytime recitals, he seemed perfectly at ease. And he could wear the swallow-tailed coat and the grey topper of the Ascot racecore with the aplomb of a sporting duke. At parties he was uninhibited. Even when he was 18 stone, he was as light on his feet as thistledown. But by all accounts, the moment he came out on the operatic stage, he seemed to be in a straitjacket. His movements were awkward and constricted. He sang his love music with exquisite feeling, but his acting was unconvincing, passionless. Bel canto alone would cut no ice with a man like Puccini, and McCormack's excuse wouldn't cut any ice either.
Try to make love on the stage to a fat woman old enough to be your grandmother.
The answer is, of course, that any actor worth his salt could do it, and McCormack must have known that. So when McCormack found that he didn't have to appear in harness with the coloratura who had left her teens far behind, that he was becoming a draw on his own account, he abandoned the opera house and turned to a new career as a soloist. He became a one-man show. There were many advantages. The exhibitionist in him was happier than ever. He had no rival on the stage. The money-lover in him was in ecstasies. The box office had only him and an accompanist to pay, instead of a whole cast, an orchestra, a conductor, and a stage director. Where opera had brought him his hundreds of pounds, Lieder and popular ballads brought him his thousands and his tens of thousands. At first, the mixture of Lieder and popular ballad didn't much affect the kind of audience that came along to a McCormack concert. The ballads were accepted as a kind of lollipop, in much the same genial spirit as Beecham's audience accepted, in fact looked forward to, his lollipops. Audiences were delighted to hear commonplace music transmuted so bewitchingly by the art of a great performer. But presently it was the ballads that were leaving the biggest impression on people's memories of a McCormack recital, and those with classical tastes began to stay away. It just wasn't worth their while coming along for a little bit of Schubert and Hugo Wolf, and what seemed a great deal. this kind that was leaving the abiding impression on people's minds as far as McCormack was concerned. As a result, his audiences changed. The highbrows stayed away, those with homely tastes packed out the hall, and they gave him the kind of clamorous applause that the pop stars of our own day get. Except that with McCormack it wasn't so utterly mindless as it mostly is today. McCormack could face a packed Royal Albert Hall and be heard at the back of that giant amphitheatre sweetly and clearly, without the awful assistance of a microphone. At the end of some particularly popular number, the audience's shouts were shouts of enthusiasm and joy, not pathological shrieks of frenzy. Not that it was roses, roses all the way for John McCormack, though. Not only had he lost caste as an artist by the 1930s, especially after his misguided appearance in a deplorable film, Song of My Heart, in which he out-Shirley Temple, but he had antagonized his British audiences by renouncing his citizenship and by becoming an American citizen. And of all years, the years he chose to apply for American citizenship was 1916, when England wasn't doing so well in the First World War, and when Ireland, the land of his birth, had her own share of trouble. Nowadays, people aren't quite as emotional about citizenship as they were in those days, and it may be difficult for them to realize the bitterness that McCormack's act aroused. It was a case of love turning to hatred. It was felt that he had deserted the ship when all decent men were sweating away at the pumps. His excuse that he had done it merely to protect his financial interests didn't improve matters. McCormack, so astute in the ways of the world, really did boob in this affair. There were repercussions even in Australia. When he went there after the war for an extended tour, he was literally howled down, and he had to pack his bags hurriedly. Of course, America made much of him. Elegant courtesies were exchanged between him and President Wilson, and the dollars kept pouring in. But he still hankered after British approval. To the Irish artist, no success really counts except London success, and he likes that to be followed by the acclaim of his own dear native land, especially his actual birthplace. In McCormack's case, he and Athlone never came to terms. He detested the place and the people. He once or twice condescended to return to Sligo, where he had gone to college, although he did decline to give an extempore recital in his own school when the boys called on him to do so. Invitations from Athlone were ignored. True, in the 1920s, he sent Athlone a gift of over £1,000 for the poor. But, as is usual in such cases, the poor saw very little of the money. When it was reported with eager malice to McCormack that his money had stuck to certain well-to-do Athlone fingers, he couldn't even pretend to shrug the matter off with a philosophic smile. No man likes to be made a fool of. McCormack was furious when taken for a ride by his cuter fellow townsmen. He never forgave. Such little charity as he had felt towards Athlone had been in his pocket, never in his heart. But he continued to be great at the holy songs. McCormack didn't put on a holy act just for professional purposes. Insofar as any outsider can judge such a matter, McCormack's religion, though not a profound and philosophic thing with him, was a very real thing with him. Even when he was at the height of his powers, he used to get terribly worked up before a recital, and it seems that whenever possible he would try to quieten his nerves by spending an hour, maybe more, in the local chapel, asking God's help and blessing. He was a constant user of the rosary, and he got an innocent thrill out of hobnobbing with bishops on socially equal terms. There can be little doubt that his being made a papal count was a real bit of heaven on earth to him, and far from begrudging his annual period of service as a chamberlain at the Vatican, he looked forward to it, as it made him a personal attendant on the Holy Father. Had the Eucharistic Congress of 1932 been held in Athlone, he would readily have swallowed his pride and gone back there as pilgrim and performer. But as the Congress was held in the Phoenix Park in Dublin, he wasn't called on to exhibit such proofs of his faith. Dressed in his papal chamberlain's medieval uniform, he helped to carry a canopy over the Pope's legate, Cardinal Lori, and to the gathered tens of thousands he sang Cesar Franck's hymn. As I've said again and again, John McCormack always took his art with the highest seriousness, whether he was singing an acknowledged classical masterpiece or a tawdry ditty from Tin Pan Alley. But he wasn't too grand to indulge in an occasional leg pull. For instance, when he was singing in Rigoletto, his leading lady distinctly heard him substitute for La mia pene the words, "Lend me a penny." And he had enough Irish malice in him to say of the great violinist Fritz Kreisler that the reason Kreisler wouldn't broadcast was that he didn't like the idea of somebody being able to turn a knob and shut him up. McCormack dismissed a not very bright person by saying,
"He has as many brains as you could push into a wren with the point of an awl."
After one of his recitals, the wife of the other popular lyric tenor, Richard Tauber, came backstage to congratulate him. His acid greeting was,
"Have you come to count the house?"
Then, with a person whose tongue was so unguarded, the truth about himself was bound to come out in revealing flashes. For instance, as when he said,
"I'm frightened in case people should tire of me."
He did all in his power to keep them interested. He employed a Kerryman as his public relations officer, and a splendid job that Kerryman did. It became a commonplace for journalists to describe John McCormack as the greatest tenor in the world. But even after he had paid the Kerryman good money to have that said of him, his own loose tongue couldn't withhold the truth as he saw it.
"I'm not the greatest tenor in the world. There is no greatest tenor today. The greatest tenor, Caruso, is dead, and the next one has not arrived."
And for that sublime piece of self-judgment, one forgives John McCormack much. He retired at 50, and was wise to do so. Few voices are as good at 50 as at 25, and his records were beginning to make that dismal truth apply only too clearly to his case. One wonders whether his obesity, his nightly champagne, and his cigarette smoking had much to do with the deterioration, and the answer is they probably had. He made a brief comeback with the BBC during the early stages of the 1939 war. Then, rather suddenly, he had to make his own personal surrender. His lungs had lost much of their natural elasticity. He was found to be suffering from emphysema. He came over to Dublin with his wife, and he and Lily lived in the Shelbourne Hotel for 18 months. Life was now a matter of relatively decorous parties, and arm-in-arm strolls through St. Stephen's Green with Lily. Somebody pointed the two of them out to me one afternoon. I was too young to be deeply impressed, and besides, I only knew of John McCormack as a singer with too much nasal tone of revoltingly sentimental ballads. I didn't give him a second glance, and when, not long afterwards, he died in his house on the road from Dublin to Dunlera at the age of 61, on the 16th of September 1945, I hardly gave him a second thought. Only years later, when the record companies began to reissue the discs he had made in his glorious prime, did I realize he was probably right when he made the proudest claim any lyric tenor can make.
"I sang Don Ottavio as well as any singer in my generation."
Tesoro nati e morti, non si volia tornar, sì, non si volia